Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the unofficial companion podcast to HBO Max's hit show, Industry. I'm Jen.
I'm Kristen.
And we are the Wall Street Skinny, two lifelong friends, former investment bankers, and teachers who are here to break down everything in your favorite show, from the finance to the romance, and to give you the skinny on what's real and what's Hollywood. So today we are going to do season 1, episode 6, and this is the holiday party episode. I'm really excited to get into it. So Kristen, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, and I want to just, because I actually, we didn't do this earlier. We did it last episode. I liked saying also just the titles. The title of this is Nutcracker. I mean, again, I'm not really sure what the meaning of that is. You can opine on that.
I was actually pretty shocked that the title of this episode was The Nutcracker and not an Exit. That's what I thought the title should have been.
I
to
agree.
Me, Nutcracker obviously evokes the holidays, right? I don't know if your parents used to drag you to see the Nutcracker at the Wang Auditorium, the Wang Theater
I went
in
a
Boston?
couple of times, but yeah, not like a ton. It wasn't like a tradition.
Yeah, my parents took me a couple of times, and I'll be perfectly honest, it's something I probably should have enjoyed as a child, and I found it excruciatingly boring. But to me, Nutcracker, the only thing I was really thinking of the whole episode was it being kind of a soft synonym for ballbuster.
I will say it does seem like the theme of this episode was fallout from some of the shit that happened last episode with those sort of like problematic dynamics with mentor and mentee. So obviously we're going to get into that. But the episode opens with Harper talking to Daria and Sarah about the encounter that we saw or witnessed last episode with Eric locking Harper in the room. And so Sarah's prodding her. So she's like, how did you feel? And she's like, I can't be sure he didn't lock the door for privacy. And they're like, but you were scared. Motivation's not the issue here. Locking a female graduate in an office against her will is just completely unacceptable. And then Daria says, wouldn't Pierpoint be better off? And so then it cuts to 72 hours earlier, because obviously we need to understand what was the motivating factor? Like, how did the news about what actually took place come to the senior people and the head of the program? So that's where we backtrack 72 hours earlier. And so everyone's setting up for this holiday Christmas party. They're bringing Christmas trees in to the trading floor. And one actual thing, Jen, I did, it's funny. Now, every time I see that red floor, I can't unsee it, or the red carpet. I will say that goes away in subsequent seasons. It's not red.
Good. I'm glad they caught that.
Yeah.
Well, here it's appropriate to have a red floor for Christmas. Like, that's fine. But did they ever... I don't remember ever seeing Christmas trees or any kind of decorations on the floor and any trading floors that I worked on. But if for no other reason, those giant Christmas trees are very clearly blocking lines of sight on the trading floor. Yeah. And I was really bothered by that. I was like, I'm sorry, that salesperson can't see that trader. Like, no, we got a problem here. Like, you need to be able to stand up over your screens and look at each other. So I was like, this wouldn't happen. But I get it. They wanted to hit you over the head with it's December. And we're specifically going to get into, we can actually backtrack what day this takes place. But so go ahead.
So next cut is basically Gus looking at this Telegraph article where the headline says, internal inquest clears Pierpoint of wrongdoing in graduate death. So obviously episode 1, Hari passed away, died sitting in a stall. And I actually screenshotted just to see like what it said. And the article goes on to say that they found that study drugs, so Provigil, we saw Harper take it the wrong way trade day. Greg gave her drugs. So they said that combined with a lack of sleep and his heart condition is what led to his death. And it is going to come up a little bit later in the episode. And so then we move down the floor, and here we have Harper, who is reading what you were talking about, not transcript. Oh my gosh. Script?
She's got a paper in front of her that says not an exit across it.
With her name.
I had no idea what this was. Yeah. No, it's not her name, I don't think.
No, it does. It does. It has like a
Stein?
Harper Stern. No, it says not a Stern. Yes, so it says not an exit, and then it's almost like confident. You know what I mean? Like how you think of like confidential. Yeah. So it says Harper Stern. So clearly he had printed this out, only wanted it for her eyes, and wrote like Harper Stern.
Understood. I didn't know that her last name was Stern. So I was like, oh, maybe Harper. And I thought it said Harper Stein. I was like, maybe this is a publishing company and this is their watermark. Like, so this isn't set for reproduction. But I was like, is this a research paper? Did Harper now write a research paper called Not an Exit? Because there were 4 meanings of exit that immediately came to mind when I saw this. We just spoke in the previous episode about Italy potentially leaving the EU. So I was like, okay, we talked about Italian Brexit or Italy, whatever we want to call it, right? Number two, we talk about exits from investments all the time. You exit a private equity investment by either selling it to another company or taking it public, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I thought this was a research paper. So I was like, oh, maybe she's writing about the themes of like fewer IPOs happening or whatever. And then I was like, wait, this is anachronistic. This is 2020. Like, hang on. Then I was thinking about when we use the term exit to talk about exit opportunities from investment banking. So one of the things that young candidates now very heavily focus on are what are the exit opportunities from sell side to, and specifically from an investment banking role to whatever it may be, usually on the buy side, something like, okay, investment banking, traditional exits from that are to go to private equity.
Yeah.
And historically, by the way, sales and trading, where Harper and our friends work, it was seen as less of a talent farm for the buy side than the investment banking division. Many people would make a lifelong career because you could make a lifelong career. You could get those outsized compensation opportunities, especially in the days of prop trading, et cetera, et cetera. But increasingly over the last 10 years, sales and trading has become a talent farm for things like the hedge funds that all these people are covering. And then the final meaning of exit, right, is like not an exit as in no escape, as in you're trapped, right? So I was like, okay, which of these meanings are we dealing with here? Whenever you have a show and there's a giant piece of text in all caps, you're supposed to pay attention, right? So I'm like, what are we supposed to be paying attention to here?
Yeah. And so as she's reading it, Daria asks her, did you go home with Greg? And Harper says no. So they had all gone out the night before. Greg had gotten incredibly drunk. And as Daria's talking to Harper, she starts to talk like personal stuff. And you see, again, Daria trying to almost like make this connection with Harper, almost like buddy. And she's like, like, what are you doing for the holidays? You going home? Harper says no. She's like, oh, if you want to busy yourself, I'm around. And then Eric obviously comes over. And you do see this little bit of possessiveness with Eric. And I feel like he doesn't want Daria and Harper getting close. So then he comes over, he says, harpsichord, I need you. And Daria senses that something is off with him. Obviously, Harper is still very, I don't want to say traumatized, although that might be the right word after what happened last episode. And so he brings her
but she's
into
in trouble
an
with both of them from the last episode.
True, but Daria's like trying to make nice with her. Yeah, exactly.
But things are not great with either of these managers. No. She lied to Daria to her face, and Daria called her out on it. And obviously, Eric, they had that huge confrontation in the office.
Yes. So Eric brings Harper into an office.
By the way, while he's pulling her off the desk, there is off-camera dialogue is huge in this episode. You have a very hilarious line from Rishi who says, I'm taking the new missus to the Alps. Yeah, I've never been, but I hear it's fucking cold. Like, so they're all talking about their holiday plans. So Rishi's making like the dumbest thing. It almost sounds like he's like still drunk from the night before, right? And just saying like stupid shit on the trading floor. Sorry,
also, though, no. One other thing, though, it's like I was like, why are they all so drunk the night before the holiday party? But whatever.
Oh, because when you're in sales and trading, that holiday party season, it is night after night after night after
that's
night.
True. That's true.
My God.
But like the fact that everybody was together, like usually I feel like it's people go to other holiday parties, but they're not always at the same place. Like here they were all at the same place.
It would be like interest rate sales and interest rate traders. We would be like doing the rounds, right? It's like, okay, we're having the party for all the hedge fund clients tonight. We're having the party for all the bank portfolio managers tonight. Like it would be things like that.
Got it. Okay. So anyway, Eric brings her into a room and hands her a piece of paper, and it has basically her comp, right? Her year-end bonus listed on it. And there's a number of things that I want to talk with this, but a couple of interesting things. So first of all, the total amount is £116,001. I was like, why the extra one? But that is neither here nor there. So from an all-in comp standpoint, that's about 150,000 American dollars, which is in line. But so in general, this is theoretically normal, like 150,000 all in for a first-year analyst. What's not normal about it is a few things. So first of all, for a first-year analyst, usually the analyst program starts in like July. So she's getting a bonus right now. Usually that should be what's called a stub bonus. So you're getting a prorated amount. So
which you wouldn't be getting. You stay on a summer cycle as a first year analyst for typically the first 2 years. Yes. For those people who stay on as third year analysts, you still probably stay on that summer thing. And then when you get promoted to associate, you get that stub to catch you up.
Yeah.
So fun fact, I got promoted from analyst to associate when I was at Lehman Brothers. And then my next pay cycle, I was at Barclays as an associate. So I had to get that stub, which effectively amounted to little more than a cup of coffee because I came from the bankrupt firm that had been bought by Barclays.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So that
and it was
stub
2008.
bonus gets you back on the winter cycle. And that's where everyone is. And bonuses are really written in stone at most firms in December and paid, depending on the firm, sometime between January and March of the next year.
Exactly. And so that was why Harper says, I thought this happened in January, and Eric says it does for most other people. And again, that is very strange. Like, you are not going to have some MD who's like randomly giving an analyst their bonus early and knows what the number is early. Harper then says, why are you giving this to me now? And Eric says, because I wanted to, because I can, because you deserve it. And Harper says, why do I deserve it? Eric replies, you can't look at a number like that on a piece of paper next to your name and still doubt yourself, which again, she's not doubting herself. She's trying to understand why she's being given this early.
The order in which he says those reasons is extraordinarily telling. He says, because I want to. Then he says, because I can. It's all about him.
True.
And then he says, because you deserve it. That gives you the insight into what is driving this. Cognizant of the little like flash forward we've just had, this seems like traditional abuser-abusee dynamics. I just humiliated you and put you in your place in this awful confrontation last episode. Now I'm love bombing you. Here's all this money, right? Like, that's what it feels like.
It does. 100% it does. And so Eric then says, you're allowed to thank me. And so Harper is like, okay, thank you. Genuinely seeming grateful, by the way. But they're interrupted by the trading floor in back of them, like erupting in a standing ovation as Greg walks on the floor. Because obviously Greg had been out, clearly wasted. And
why do we have a tall doofus named Greg in every HBO show?
Greg from Succession. This is so true. I never thought of that, but yeah, I don't know. So as he's walking on, I think it was Rishi says, congrats to the world's most consistently hungover man, Mr. White Privilege Silver Spoon himself. And then Robert pipes in saying, last night was biblical. So as he's coming on the floor, Eric says, where's Mickey D's? You come in blasted past 9 a.m., you're buying McDonald's for the team. And
100% true, by the way. This is a rule on Wall Street, okay? But it's not 9 a.m. You're not coming in past 9 a.m. If you're going to come in at 9, just don't come, okay? I had a very unfortunate night out where I woke up the next morning and found like literally the hallway littered with a trail. I was like a little Red Riding Hood or something. It was like my scarf. Then like 20 meters down, it was like my wallet. Then like, 10 meters down, it's like my keys. So after these big epic desk nights out, basically whoever comes in last, they better have already ordered breakfast for the desk and paid for it. Like that is a done deal. So that's 100% true.
Rishi makes this comment that I had to look up saying he's been brassing, which I had no idea what that means. Too. I think it means like he'd been with a prostitute. Is that what you also?
According to that same Reddit thread. Found. Yeah. I mean, so British fans, you guys have been great on our DMs. Please continue to help us out with some of this UK slang.
Me too. But so Eric then says to Harper, pass me that thing. Pass me the script. So that's that not an exit that Harper was reading, which had her name on it. Like it was meant just for her eyes. Now, I don't know why Harper just hands him the script. She doesn't even look like she feels that bad about it. But anyway, so she hands Eric the script and Greg looks so uncomfortable. So Eric says, this is meant for an audience, right? And he starts reading from it. And it's like, I've had X, Y, and Z types of food because I no longer have a job. And I don't know if you wrote down the actual food. I
didn't the line he read from the script at all.
I didn't either. So Eric then asks him, is this job not good enough for you? Do you know how lucky you are to be here? Or maybe you've been bred to sleepwalk into this place like Mr. Silver Spoon, Mr. White Privilege. And we've seen in the past episodes that Eric does have a chip on his shoulder about how he did have to pick himself up by his bootstraps. So again, I do think there's this like little bit of resentment that we keep seeing pop back up everywhere. But he then says, do you know what time it is? It's time to wake up, wake up, wake up.
Obviously with wake up, there's the dual meaning, right? As in like wake up and get your ass into the office early and not be hungover, but also like wake up to how lucky you are to have this job. But
which is true. By the way, like is true, but also like this was just unacceptable.
In holiday party season, listen, if you were to do this, if you were to come in super, super late, assuming it's a one-off thing and not a pattern, which we'll see whether or not it is for Greg. But assuming it's just a one-off thing, your manager might give you like a ribbing, might even pull you off the desk and be like, hey, listen, this happens, but this happens once and this happens never again.
Yeah.
You know, the absolute public evisceration that he gives to Greg is very extreme. They are painting Eric's character as very extreme across the board, as opposed to the subtlety that we had early on. Even Rishi thinks this is a bit harsh. Yes. And Rishi's the one who originally was like, Mr. White Privilege.
I mean, everyone, like Daria looks horrified. Harper, I don't know what her expression is supposed to be saying. Like, she doesn't even like seem like she's that sorry to have given Eric the script. And Rishi obviously says, fuck me, that was a bit strong. So yeah, they're all just looking at this like, what the hell? And then Eric says to Harper, I want to introduce you to some market movers tonight.
Oh, and we've got Harper's endowments coming in. Party.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, oh, okay, like back to normal course of business.
Yeah. And we've got Harper's endowment coming in. Then says to Daria, what did you learn at HBS? And Daria replies, it was the world's most expensive networking event. Eric also says waste of money, which by the way is exactly how people who start in the industry, especially in sales and trading, look at business school. So I actually feel like there is so much here. So first of all, Daria looks exactly like the type of associate or VP you would see on the desk that had gone to HBS. Like she just does. Like I don't even know what that means, but I'm like, oh my gosh, that tracks 100% that they have her having gone to HBS. The second thing is it was the world's most expensive networking event, which is absolutely true. We get asked a lot about breaking into the industry. And the reality is that usually if you haven't done it out of undergrad, the easiest way to do it is out of business school. But it's what, $80,000 plus a year. Plus, it's not just that, you're spending all this money on all these international trips. And I had friends who used to describe it. So Jen and I did not go to business school, but the way that people talk about it, especially for people who like weren't coming from a banking or consulting background previously, because everyone spends, like you're going out to these dinners and it's like, I'll have the steak, I'll have this expensive bottle of wine. Everyone splits it and you're not going to be there like, I'll get the salad. And so you're basically not only spending money on this education, the whole purpose of going to business school is the networking. It is the brand on your resume, having HBS on your resume opens doors, and having a network that you can then call, whether you're doing recruiting events, whether you're trying to get a client, whatever. So it's 100% true that it is the world's most expensive recruiting event. That is how pretty much everyone I know talks about it. Eric's comment, it's a waste of money, perfectly encapsulates how people who start in investment banking or sales and trading look at going to business school as like, why the hell would you do that? I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
No, I think that I really want to hammer home the common misconception that going to business school is a prerequisite for an investment banking job. It could not be farther from the truth. Sales and trading used to recruit out of business schools. They've all but abandoned that practice in the modern era.
Yeah. So the reason, by the way, that banking has the recruiting out of business school more than sales and trading is there's a lot more attrition out of banking. But most people who come to banking out of college look at banking for them as a stepping stone to the buy side after 2 years. And I know that's starting to get more common in sales and trading, but it was like ubiquitous across the board.
It was like prescriptive.
So you kind of had to hire the associates out of business school because you didn't have anyone who wanted to get promoted. Now it's a little more common. People will still exit. And
whereas
as
now
you said,
sales and trading is hiring probably fewer people, all else being equal, than it was 20 years ago. So they're not bringing in both the massive analyst class and a massive associate class. Yeah. Exactly. People stay. The people who stay, you have a very effective culling process. It's very efficient, and you just don't have those hiring needs.
It's also like a pyramid. Like you have the most number of analysts, you have fewer associates, fewer VPs. So for the most part in sales and trading, yes, you are going to get attrition.
Depends
but
on
you
the
still
desk. You may have some very heavy MD benches on some of these desks.
Really? Oh, funny. That's funny.
But I did want to call out something else. So we touched on the fact that this whole conversation started because he mentioned that Harvard's endowment is coming. So we've talked about most of these people are covering hedge funds that we've encountered thus far. But remember, sales and trading covers all institutional investors, not just hedge funds. So hedge funds are one small piece of the players in the public fixed income markets. And the pension funds and endowments and mortgage servicers and insurance companies that make up the whole rest of those clients, in reality, this CPS desk might actually be sliced and diced according to which type of accounts these people are covering, not by which products in which they specialize. And that was always like the dream of the macro sales role is like, okay, well, I cover this client. And it makes sense to slice and dice according to clients because you understand their mandate, you understand the type of flows. An endowment is going to do something for a very different reason than a hedge fund is. And so Harvard's endowment, as we all know, is one of the world's biggest, if not the biggest college endowment. And fun fact, one of the women who used to cover Harvard's endowment from a fixed income sales standpoint was actually on our podcast in a very early episode.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if you look at Silver Kite, how much do they have in assets under management? Like $200 million? Look at someone like Harvard. And actually, I don't have the number off the top of my head. I know Yale is $40 billion.
Yeah, I think Harvard's about the same.
40 billion. So it just gives you a sense of the magnitude of the amount of money. But again, like they're not in and out of the markets the same way. Like
and they're not
tend
leveraged
to be
the same way.
Exactly. So it's a different type of investing, a different type of trading, but still they're an important client. So Eric then says, harpsichord, if you would accompany me, be my +1, which I thought was a very odd way of phrasing, like asking her to come to a work dinner. And Harper looks, what was that? It didn't? Okay. Well, Harper looks a little uncomfortable. Daria senses that. And so she basically says she can't. I need her on the desk. I guess that the Fed is announcing today while they're at their holiday party, because remember, we're like 5 hours behind.
It very much looks like a hastily made up excuse. She says, a client called asking about the Fed, so I need Harper to stay on the desk in case they want to do a trade. And Harper just goes along with it. But just a quick note on the mechanics of the lie and why it makes sense. The Federal Open Markets Committee meeting happens over 2 days, a Tuesday and a Wednesday. And their decision is then released at 2 p.m. New York time on that Wednesday. So fun fact, I actually looked up when the Fed meeting was in 2020. It would have been December 15th and 16th. So the announcement would have been on the 16th. And fun fact, for those of you who are living in the modern day era where the Fed just eased, well, their decision on December 16th, 2020 was, of course, to keep interest rates at, you guessed it, 0. So a very different world than we are living in right now. But yes, this all ties out. So in the winter, right, New York and London are 5 hours apart. So at 2 p.m. New York time, 7 p.m., she'll be late to the party.
Yes. So Eric says, I don't want her doing this. And so Daria says she's already agreed to it. Eric asks if it's true. Harper says yes. So it was clear that it was—
the Cold War between Daria and Eric has turned into a straight up pissing contest now. It is now like hostile open warfare, which is, I think we've seen the stakes escalating along here. I didn't pick up on some of the earlier cues that you did, Kristen, but it is unequivocally clear that there is like open animosity now between Daria and Eric. And having seen the little preview, teaser at the beginning of the episode, we know where this is all headed.
Exactly. So in the background, by the way, I just wanted to make this point because I had messaged you about this, Jen. So Rishi answers the phone and says, Trust Fund Terry, are you coming to the party? And so I messaged Jen. I was like, Trust Fund Terry is like a social media account. Jen, we should set our goal of getting the Wall Street Skinny mentioned on the show. And Jen was like—
From your lips to God's ears.
I know. She was like, I don't think they're talking about social media. She was like, I think that that's like just a saying, the way that Plain Jane is a saying. This was filmed in 2019. I feel like social media didn't have— I don't want to say it didn't have the same bent. Like people were still on it, but as much now.
It wasn't part of mainstream popular culture. You wouldn't reference a character on social media as like effectively a character in the plot the way that you would now. I think
whereas
it would
nowadays—
be very normal now. Exactly. And I haven't seen seasons 2 and 3, but like
they
for them to weave something in like that, well, writers
like
of the
liquidity
show,
said
if you
XYZ.
really Wall Street Skinny, if the Wall Street Skinny said something, if the writers were to weave that in an upcoming season, it would land.
Universe.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Where it just wouldn't have landed.
Okay. So now we're moving over to Yaz is part of the desk, right? So the FX desk, and Hillary is coming up collecting money for charity. And by the way,
because he's dressed up like he's like a Salvation Army guy, but what used to happen on the trading floor, and I don't know if this is illegal at all banks, but what they used to do is come around and take up collections for the admins, because the admins, they are not contributing to P&L. So they're effectively administrative assistants. So predominantly the MDs would chip in thousands of dollars of their own cash from their wallets to the admins, and then it was off the books and it was their bonus.
That actually would make more sense if he was trying to get money.
But I don't know. That's what
they should have made it.
But exactly, they didn't explicitly say why he was coming around taking collections.
Right. So Jackie, who we now know her name, you were like, who's that woman who like?
Jackie Walsh.
We know her name.
They've said it.
Yes, Jackie Walsh. She says the most ridiculous things, and I didn't write down what she said. Wildly inappropriate.
This is the same woman who made the quote-unquote 50 Shades of Yellow joke
that's
about
not
the quants in the prior episode.
That's true.
She now says something that I won't repeat about whom she thinks these donations are for.
I didn't even write. So I was like, I didn't write down what it was. I remember it being very off color, but she's just ridiculous. So Yaz is looking through her purse, like can't find any money. So Kenny says, here, this is for
women
both
have
of
ever
us.
have cash. I'm sorry. Like,
No,
this
women
is
don't have
one
cash.
stereotype
No.
that I'm totally willing to cop to, which is I never have cash in my wallet. Don't try to rob me.
Oh God, me neither.
You'll probably, and I usually forget half my credit cards. So like, it's useless. One key point in the donations is that Kenny makes a donation and says, this is for both of us.
Yes. Kenny is trying to be very
conciliatory.
Yes, with Yaz. And he's doing a whole bunch of things to try to make amends for what a jackass he was.
Well, remember, we ended the last episode with this mysterious call from Kenny at 1:12 in the morning. You had hypothesized, and I don't know if this is with like your added insight of what happened in later episodes or not, that he was calling to apologize for everything that went down that night at the strip club. But it's very clear from the opening salvo of this, which starts off with Kenny being like, oh my God, this donation is from both of us. And then when Hillary asks if Silver Kite is coming to the party, and Jackie's like, oh, wait, are you actually managing people? And he's like, okay, fine. Like, I'm not the best manager, but like, how did it go with Silver Kite? Yasmin and Kenny both look at each other, and Kenny's waiting to see how Yasmin reacts after that strip club debacle. Like, oh my God, is she going to rat me out? And Yasmin's like, oh, it was great. Because remember, Yasmin, cool girl, everything's fine. And Kenny, you can see visibly relieved, is like, oh, phew. And then he's like, yeah, she really stepped up. She's been doing really well. So like singing her praises to the big MD on the desk in front of Yasmin, right?
Yeah. So Hillary then asks, where's the ticket? Meaning like, are they going to do business with us? And Kenny says he's gone a bit cold. Hillary replies, better warm him up then.
Yasmin says that.
Oh, okay. But then anyway, so Yasmin sends Maxim a Bloomberg chat saying, hoping to see you tonight, and then adds like XX as an afterthought.
Which you do not send, by the way, to anyone on IB chat. Like definitely not a client.
They're monitored. Yep.
Yeah. We don't send kisses over IB chats to our clients, guys.
No.
We do get some great off-camera dialogue from Jackie, who calls up a client, and she's like, Chuck the fuck. Yes, it's horrible to hear your voice as well, which is much more representative of how we speak to clients. And again, this backs up my trust fund Terry theory that like we're just calling people silly names. But like, this is how we talk to clients, guys. We don't send them kisses over IB chat. Jackie's absurd,
100%.
but like, this is much more representative.
But it's more representative of the way that someone potentially would act, which is also like problematic, but that's a whole different story.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah, Jackie's a bit wild. Remember, Kenny also says, if Maxim does come, you lead, right? Like he is laying it on thick. He's like, you are the one with this account.
Yes. I mean, also though, I think he probably knows that this guy is not going to want to work with him. So if they have any like possibility of getting business, it will be with Yaz. So Robert then comes over with a gift, asking Yaz if she has anything on the dollar positioning pre-Fed. And Yaz is like, you came over to ask a work question? You could have just IB'd, right? Instant Bloomberg'd. And so Harper then sees them. And like, you kind of see this throughout the episode. Like there is something with Harper feeling, based on one of the very, very first episode, she clearly feels some kind of way towards Robert. And she obviously made a move on him and he rebuffed her. She knows that they have this sort of will they, won't they. But again, I do think Harper is just upset about this. So anyway, Robert hands Yaz a gift and says, brought this for you. She takes it, puts it in the desk, whatever. Robert walks away upset. And Maxim then replies on Bloomberg saying, not sure I'm going to make it out on time. So that's obviously a little bit disappointing because this is the potential for Yasmin's first client. So next scene, it's Harper and Yaz are outside smoking. And I'm like, how dark does it get? Maybe it gets dark in London early.
London is fucking dark and cold, right? They're like, it's always dark and cold there. That's like what 10 a.m. looks like in London.
Well, anyway, so they're outside. Yeah, I guess they're probably vaping versus smoking. Not that that makes a huge difference. Anyway, they're both talking about the problematic mentor-mentee relationships. So this whole scene is them talking about these fucked up relationships. Harper making a joke about the fact that she got locked in this room with Eric and was traumatized by it. Yaz talking about how she's almost excited to see Kenny. It's almost that thing where it's that abuse and then like you take and then you give and then you take.
But I also think it's so important that Harper says, well, if the outcome is better, what's the difference of how you get there?
Yeah.
That is so telling about Harper's overall attitude towards everything and why it's so surprising that we know she's going to end up in this conference room because for Harper, it seems like the ends always justify the means, whether it be how she dealt with the trade, whether it be how she got to Pierpoint by lying. Harper has these very questionable morals and scruples. And this is actually a very important sentence to remember when we get to the final note of the episode, that's her approach. And that's the guidance she's giving Yaz of like, hey, listen, if you're finally getting playing time in front of clients, all thanks to the fact that Kenny feels bad for how he treated you in front of them. Who cares how you got there? Now you've got the clients. Run with it, sister. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's super fucked up. But that seems to be her guiding philosophy.
Yep. I mean, they both have interesting guiding philosophies, which we're going to talk to. But so now in the next scene, Harper walks over to Greg and tries to apologize to him for giving Eric the script.
It's not just the fact that she let his screenplay be read, but it's also the fact that the previous night he got himself in some trouble, clearly with the law, and Harper wasn't there for him.
Well, also, it sounded like he was blackout drunk, couldn't stand, and instead of helping him get in a cab to go home, she just left. And Greg is just like ignoring her. He's pissed, right? Obviously. And not looking at her, kind of just replies, I got arrested. Then ignoring Harper, he walks over to Robert, starts asking him about some British comedy called Blackadder. I mean, I was looking this up. I don't know if there's any significance or if it's literally just some like random British sitcom that
Same. I was like, best case scenario, I'm going to have to watch like a few episodes of this 1983 thing with like Mr. Bean. I'm very confused about what's happening here. So like, we're going to leave this to our UK listeners. If you guys can add any insight on whether Blackadder has significant meaning here, please let us know. But we're just going to leave it at that. It's an old British show.
Anyway, Harper then asks Robert to keep an eye on Greg at the holiday party, and Robert agrees. And so this ultimately is going to not turn out well.
Talk about the blind leading the blind. Yeah.
I know. Like two addicts. So anyway, so now we're at the next scene where at the party, Yaz is downing a glass of champagne. Theo and Gus, Theo's back. Yay. Talking about their Christmas plans.
We love our magicians. We love our magicians at our Wall Street holiday parties. Oh, the magician is there. The magician is doing like a trick with some string in front of Eric, who looks totally nonplussed. And then the magician, we see the magician later doing a trick in front of Jackie, who we all know Jackie. Jackie literally is sitting in a chair scowling at him. But this is a classic mainstay of Wall Street holiday parties or like client events is the magician who comes around and does stuff. And it tickles me because Kristen and I were just at one of these big cocktail parties at the Case conference. And the magician there was awesome, by the way. Shout out to Foodie Magician.
Yes. So Theo then asks Gus if he's ever thought about a different part of the bank. Like we've said before, Gus is a fish out of water, floundering in sales and trading. He does not fit the mold. He was supposed to be in banking. We talked about this a million times. And so Theo offers to put in a word with his boss. But by the way, like research seems like a great fit. You even said this in a prior episode for someone like Gus. So Gus then replies, I thought you couldn't bear to be around me at work. As he's saying that, Alice, again, Theo's girlfriend, comes up.
Gives Theo like a huge performative kiss on the lips in front of Gus, by the way.
Yes. And so as they're talking, Sarah walks up, pulls Gus away, and introduces him to someone named Lord Okai. Is that the right pronunciation? Okay. Right? Who is a politician and author. And Gus actually makes a very good first impression with him. So
we all know that Gus had political aspirations. When Theo was looking at that book in his apartment back in the first or second episode, we knew that Gus had wanted to be basically like this guy at one point in his career. Yeah. And instead we know that in Gus's own words, he says, my tolerance for this place is at rock bottom. We know that he's effectively hit rock bottom in his own career.
And by the way, we haven't even mentioned this. Not only was he taken out of IBD, he sat next to Hari, who died. So the shit that he's gone through this year, he has this boyfriend who sucks, who like has a girlfriend. He's floundering at work, literally sat next to the dude who died. Like, all this stuff is shit. He is going through a lot, and we'll see later. But like, it was a little bit, I thought, suspicious. Like, why is Sarah introducing him to this person? I mean, does she know that he has political ambitions?
I agree. I was like, why is Sarah doing him this favor when he, by the way, was so rude to her at that grad dinner when he was like, I think sales and trading sucks. You have toxic culture. Why on earth is she doing him any favors? I thought the same thing. My little hackles were up.
Spidey sense. Yeah. And we do see later, there's clearly an ulterior motive at play.
While Gus is there nailing the banter with Lord Okai, the camera starts to pan away and we see Hillary, the FX managing director, come up and he's like, what's up, Lord Oki? You know, like can't even pronounce his name. Total foot in mouth, doesn't have the grace and the pedigree of Gus. No one can compete with Gus's pedigree.
Yeah, well, maybe Yaz can, but also both of them.
Fair.
The irony is that both of them are the two that are probably floundering the most. So next scene, Greg comes over to Robert with more drugs. And Robert's actually taking his assignment that Harper gave him seriously. So he's trying to say, take it easy. Yes, and then Usman shows up. So apparently Usman and Casper, Robert's only client, are having dinner. And Robert is asking why it wasn't in his diary, like it wasn't in his calendar. Usman said, well, they didn't want us to be there, year-end stuff. Very vague. And Greg comes up with champagne. Now, Usman starts talking about how he was supposed to fly to Egypt, deliberately missed his flight. And
blew off his wife and kids to come to this party is what he's telling them.
And Usman just pulls out some drugs. And so Greg, of course, is there, all excited, like, wow, that's beautiful. And Robert's like, we're having a quiet night. So Usman then says this thing, and I want to read it, quote, directly. People like to dress up this sell-side, buy-side shit. But let me remind you, you're in the service industry, my friend. And so the implication is you're going to do these drugs with me. I don't care that you're trying to not do drugs tonight. Do your job and do drugs with me. So that's all, whatever.
Yep.
All right, so Robert then catches Yaz's eye, which shifts combos. So basically, it's like each of these scenes, it's one person, then it goes to the next, then it goes to the next. It almost reminded me, remember like in, what was it called, like Birdman or something?
Had they done this holiday party in one take, I think this would be an epic episode. I think it would have made it so much cooler, but sadly they don't.
Yes. It almost seemed like they tried to, but then didn't totally do it. But it did have that feeling.
Unfortunately, there's too many things happening in different places, so the logistics were impossible. You could have made it like with Robert as the go-between or something like that he's the connecting force between all the different things, but no. That would have been a great directorial choice.
I know. That would have been very cool. But no, so now Robert catches eyes with Yaz, which that is what shifts us to now the Yaz plot line. So Yaz is sitting with Jackie and Kenny. And I mean, again, Jackie just being completely off color. She says, Yasmin, would you describe yourself as a horny person? And Kenny is like, what the fuck, Jackie? And she's like, no, I'm asking in a professional sense. But she continues to go on being wildly inappropriate and vulgar. And Kenny is sitting there very, almost like trying to be straight-laced. He's almost like similar to Robert. Robert has a drug problem. Kenny has an alcohol problem. Kenny's sitting there drinking some water, right? He's like, I'm pacing myself. But then as soon as Yaz lets him know that Maxim isn't coming, he's like, oh, I guess I can enjoy myself now. Which also like, no, you have a drinking problem. Please don't drink. Anything you wanted to add on that or just?
Well, yeah, no. I mean, if a male manager had said what Jackie is saying to Yaz and anyone had overheard it, it would be a 5-alarm fire. We'd be in that office room right now with this person.
Yeah.
And Jackie is kind of hiding behind the fact that she's another woman speaking to Yaz this way. And when Kenny defends Yaz, Jackie's like, Yasmin's cool. She is one of us. Why are you acting so uncool, Kenny? Which made me think of Luann Lesseps from The Real Housewives of New York City. Like, be cool. Don't be all uncool. She like falls into a bush, right? Like
that's actually very interesting because just back to episode and actually we see frickin' Nicole again. She shows up. Nicole
oh my God.
Mercer,
yeah, no,
but
Jackie
the same idea.
Yes, Jackie is being wildly inappropriate here. And Jackie says finally to Kenny, what's gotten into you? Or rather, who? Meaning, has Yasmin gotten to you? Is there something going on here? Like, so all of this is so inappropriate. And what Jackie's doing very explicitly with Yasmin is warning her about the dangers of sleeping with someone at work. She says like, oh, you really don't want to be trapped in an elevator with someone the next morning after you've had a one-night stand. Right?
Sorry. Also, like, very funny that she says trapped in an elevator, given the Theo Gus thing later.
And Gus, and then what we later see with Yasmin and Robert in an elevator, right? Yeah. So this literally plays out in succession exactly how she described it. Being someone who dated people at work, I will tell you, being trapped in an elevator with your ex-boyfriend going up and down the trading floor, so like that's a real thing. This definitely does happen. So the irony is actually she's giving her some like somewhat sage advice delivered in the world's most inappropriate way.
Yes.
So and offensive.
So now, again, unfortunately, our Birdman one-take scene has come to a close. Now we are back on the trading floor with Harper. So she's sitting alone, listening to the Fed. And as she's sitting there, she thinks to herself, you know what I want to do? I want to go up and see what this gift is that Robert gave to Yaz. So she goes over, opens up the drawer, and takes a look at the gift. And so there's a little note that says, what do you get the girl who has everything? Proof that she loves to give. And there's a photo of Robert with the freaking underwear over his head. And as she's, again, like trying to break in to see this, Eric startles her and says, at least get yourself a drink. So again, trading floor is empty. He comes back on the desk.
Now this is when I realized that the party was at the office, by the way, because I had thought it's very atypical, like we said, for the holiday decor to be at the office. It is also equally unlikely that a party of this magnitude would take place at the office. Typically, these firms will rent like a hotel ballroom or like rent out a big restaurant or something like that.
So then Harper decides to go to the party. And of course, first person she sees is that good old Nicole, the one who assaulted her in the first episode. And so she goes over to say hi. And Nicole's just being kind of like drunk and obnoxious. And Daria is there with her. Actually, I should note that Nicole and Daria are talking because remember, Nicole is Daria's client, but it was clear that Harper did not want to see her. And so Daria basically gets her off the hook. She's like, she's not going to stay and entertain you. She's doing something for me, but obviously she came to just get a drink or whatever. So next scene, Yaz gets Kenny a drink and they actually seem to be getting along when Maxim walks in. And so Kenny says, well, I thought he wasn't coming. And Yaz turns around surprised because she's like, fuck, neither did I. Kenny replies because Maxim starts talking to Hillary like, well, Hillary looks happy. And then he's like, I'm going to make myself scarce. Like, you lead the charm offensive. Again, knowing that there is no way that Maxim wants to see Kenny because he wasn't just horrible to Yaz. He was also horrible to Maxim. So Yaz goes up. They start talking. And then we get to the next scene. Next scene, Eric and his wife, Candace, are standing right outside a bathroom. Harper walks by and Eric calls Harper over and introduces her. Harper asks what she does and she says that she works at Google. And Eric is like, don't be so modest. Everyone knows she's an ambitious bitch. Which, by the way, the language, but also like the way that they interact with each other is wild.
That didn't raise any flags for me.
No. Later. But it's like, this is like the beginning. This is like, and then it's going to go like up a notch. And then it's going to get up a notch. Like it just keeps going up and getting kind of more and more insane. So she says, I work high up at Google. So Candace says, he talks about you a lot at home, which must mean he likes you. And again, Eric says a kind of weird thing saying, I bring you home with me, Harper. And then Candace says, I heard he compensated you very well. And Eric is just like, what the fuck? And so she says, well, then why did you tell me? And he says, don't talk to her too much or she'll start to wonder why you're with me. And this is where they start to have like, again, a very odd interaction. So she says, why am I with you? And Eric replies, fuck you, cunt. She laughs
he also
and
seems
says,
to
fuck
like
you, cunt back.
Snap when he says that. Like his tone changes on a hair, at least from my perception.
I thought it was more kind of being funny, but like, I didn't see it as angry. Like, it was just
immediately, they both start laughing immediately after the quick cut to Harper where she looks horrified.
Yes.
But to me, it felt like, did you guys, when there's like a bad guy and the bad guy in the movie is talking to the good guy and they say something like really scary, like, oh, maybe I'll just kill you. And then they're like, ha, and you're like laughing along like, ha. And that's like exactly how I took that of what he said to her, that all of a sudden we've reached a level where you've said something now to your wife in front of your female employee that like, you should never say period, full stop, let alone saying that to your wife is so out of control.
The mother of your kids too. I know,
and I've had this conversation before. That word is tossed around more in the UK than it is in America. It's like a 5-alarm fire if somebody says that word in America. It is less so in the UK. It is more common, but it is still not something that you should be saying in a workplace context.
No. I mean, I feel like it's a bad word, but I also don't see it differently to like fuck. I mean, personally, but maybe it is, or like bitch. Like I think to me, like bitch and cunt are kind of equally as offensive.
Oh no, I think it's like 10x.
Really? Okay, no. It's in my head, like they're both equally bad. If someone calls me a bitch, I would be pissed. If someone called me a cunt, I'd be the same amount of pissed.
Really? No, I think it's like tossing around casual insults versus like unforgivable language.
Weird. Okay. It's just like maybe my perception of how bad words are. But to me, I don't know. I've been so desensitized to pretty much like all words that they're all bad, but they're all the same.
I kind of use like the ABC TV show as a decent metric for what you can and can't say in polite society.
Asshole,
you can say bitch. You can say bitch on TV all you want. You cannot say cunt.
I've never noticed that. Anyway, so Harper is clearly confused, thrown, and seemingly uncomfortable with the interaction, rightfully so. And Candace then asks if he treats her like this at work. And Eric replies she knows that it's playful. And as that happens, Daria walks out.
Like the conversation kind of comes to a screeching halt when Daria walks by. Candace doesn't.
Yes, that's a good
Candace
point.
like, hey, what's up? Good to see you. And Daria's like, hi. Nobody knows how to act when Daria's around.
That's true.
And
Eric's
like, what were we saying? Yeah, it's kind of like, let's move on. And Daria gets it. Yeah. She's like, bye, nice to see you. Nothing against you, Candace. But I just want to call out for a second. It is so crazy that Eric and his wife are sitting there cackling about like, ha ha ha, like this is how we speak to each other. And Harper's like, cool, this is weird. Like, no thanks.
It was weird.
How do I?
Oh, yeah. It was wildly weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, all right. So now next scene, Harper's back on the floor and Daria comes over with a bottle of champagne and asks like what the Fed is doing. Feds have left rates unchanged. Okay. She's basically waiting there to see if there's anything material in the language. And I actually wanted, Jen, you to just talk about this for a second because it might not be as big of a deal when rates are zero and they're not going anywhere. But you were talking about how when you were on the trading floor, it would be like reading tea leaves. You'd be like, this is what the statement is. And then this is what the statement was last time. And they said this word. And then this time they didn't say this word. And you like compare the two. And it's like, what does that mean for like trying to figure out what they're going to do the next cycle? Like, I don't know if you wanted to pipe in with any of that because we had such an amazing conversation before.
I think you just summarized it. Yeah. So the market, when there is any kind of suspicion of a Fed on the move, but quite frankly, with every single Fed announcement, there will be the prepared statement and people will compare the statement from this meeting to the statement from the prior meeting to see if quite literally so much as a comma has changed. The slightest change in any single word can give the market or can give, prognosticators some idea about the future path of Fed policy, which in turn greatly impacts the markets. Now, with a Fed on hold in perpetuity kind of scenario, what people were probably most likely looking for were changes to the Fed's balance sheet at that time. And full disclosure, I did not go back and look at the full Fed statement from that meeting to know if they increased or decreased the size of their open market operations in terms of buying things like mortgage-backed securities and treasuries in the open market to what happens when that happens, right, is people always, there's the misconception that the Fed prints money. The Fed does not print money. The U.S. Treasury prints money. But what the Federal Reserve does when they are expanding their balance sheet and they are quantitative easing and they are increasing the money supply is they buy securities with money that did not previously exist. And so when that money hits up in the accounts of the investment banks that sold them these securities, there's now more money in the system that the world can go spend on riskier assets. And that's what was happening in 2020. So to be fair, we already got the announcement. Everyone have already read the statement. Like, we're now a little late. So Harper's just kind of stalling.
Right. Well, she probably was like, I don't want to go back on the floor with freaking Nicole. And so Daria, like I said, she comes in with this bottle of champagne and Daria says Nicole turned into a bit of a handful. And Harper asks like if she knew that she was coming. And Daria's like, nope, she just turned up. Daria does make this statement, like I had sort of previewed earlier, that she said, I think I did you a disservice introducing you to her, but you can use that relationship on Riff. So
did Daria know? Because remember, we had this hypothesis in the first episode that then based on Daria's then subsequent behavior, that we were like, no, she had no idea that Nicole was this like creep who might molest Harper. But now I'm like, did you know? Like, did she do this to you? Because we've already seen
I would be surprised if she didn't do it to her. And I will leave it at that.
I will say this, as someone
for reasons you will see in season 2.
Okay, got it. I, as someone who was Daria effectively, have had creepy clients that I've gotten junior women in front of who were creepy to me, but I was like, oh, I will be the buffer, you know what I'm saying? Right. And I won't put up with this stuff because, it's the right thing to do to get junior women in front of as many clients as you can to empower them. And then you're like, wait, but am I part of the problem because I knew this person was creepy to me? Should I not be exposing them to, like, what do you do? Right. So just don't be a creepy client, basically.
Well, it's the type of thing where like you should at least warn them and say, hey,
yes, that's true. I never did it without warning. I never did it without warning.
And also don't leave them at a dinner by themselves with someone who has a history of doing that. So I will say, without giving too much away, it is clearly a pattern with this woman. So the Harper thing is not an isolated incident. That's again, like as much as I will say, but it's like, I want to believe that Daria didn't mean to. And even knowing that she did it to other people, I didn't really think that she would have, again, brought her to the dinner and left her alone. Like, I do wonder about, you talked about this. At the end of the day, these are not real people. This is people who are writing characters. And I do think sometimes like you write episode 1 and you do the pilot and you film it and like what it is there is a different thing from what it is from who the character becomes. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a little bit of that. I do think that the person that Daria is now probably wouldn't have left Harper alone with Nicole. Clearly her saying she's turning into a bit of a handful. I might have done you a disservice introducing you to her. I mean, to me, speaks to the fact that like I would be surprised if she didn't try to do something with Daria as well. But I could also see Daria thinking she did it to me, but whatever.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and I think we've spoken about this before too, that these are nuanced characters and people don't make perfect decisions. And so if someone's creepy to you in a one-off thing and it like never happened again and you were like, okay, maybe it was just an isolated incident. This was specific to me. And also there is that like victim blaming element, and we can get way too in the weeds here, but you're like, maybe it was something that I did, which is what I would think. Like maybe I did something to suggest that was okay behavior. This person here, this young person is doing everything right. I have no reason to suspect that this is going to go wrong with them. And this client has never behaved this way again. So clearly it's not a pattern. This was a one-off thing and it's probably my fault. Therefore, it's okay to do. So I think we can spiral with this due to some great writing or poor writing, depending on how you want to look at it, about how Daria is approaching the situation. But Daria is being sisterly here and being like, I'm so sorry. Like, hey, my bad. I'm sorry Nicole is a handful. I'm sorry that she's like hugging us and putting her arm around us and like super sloppy drunk and blah, 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 blah. You don't need to hide here on the trading floor. Let's hang.
Yes. All right. So next scene, I was literally like in tears laughing.
Oh my God.
So Robert, Usman, and
Greg is the best comic relief in the
go
episode.
into a bathroom with some drug that I had to look up called like 2CB. I don't know. It's a psychedelic drug apparently. And as they're in a bathroom stall, all three of them, this Lord Okay walks in. And he can see them, and they're like, talking, and they see him walk in. He can see them, and he's like, like, I see and hear you guys. And so Greg says, lift up a leg so he can't see 6 feet. If Robert goes, so he'll see 3. Usman then decides to get on the toilet, and Robert goes, but that's still 4 feet. So they decide to like lift up 1 foot each, but like they can't decide on which one. And they're like, but our shoes don't match. The dialogue and the visuals were, I mean, I could not stop laughing. It was so funny. Anyway, I actually like love that scene. But so
agreed.
They ultimately do whatever this drug is. And Robert is trying to not take it. And Usman says, you're my coverage. You fill my orders. And so Robert basically goes ahead and takes 2. And then they walk out of the bathroom. Lord Okai is sitting there like washing his hands as 3 dudes like come out of the bathroom. And again, I love this scene. This was my favorite scene I think I have seen in a while. So.
No, it was great for comic relief. And I will say this, I never, ever, 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 ever once felt pressured by a client to do drugs. But I will say, in a much tamer way. Like, they would always be like, oh, come on, one more drink. And so it would never be like, you're my coverage, you fill my orders, therefore you have to do this drug. But it would be like, oh, I don't know, the sales girl from Goldman would stay out for another hour. Like you might get some gentle ribbing like that. And like, I was totally a sucker for that. And I was like, oh, yeah. So I think that's what this is more representative of. This seems to be a very, 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 very extreme representation of that, and we'll get into that.
Yes.
Back at the party, we've got Yaz holding Maxim's drinks while he's finishing up a phone call, and he's getting off the phone with, quote unquote, sorry, some guy who's bullish on crypto because he thinks gold bars are too heavy and therefore too expensive to take to Mars. So he's bullish on crypto as a space currency. And I was like, okay, who is he on the phone with? Like Elon Musk, right? What is this conversation?
As a space currency.
Right? Like, exactly.
100%.
So
okay,
that's when Maxim then asks Yaz how she's handling the Kenny situation.
Yes. So Maxim asks what's going on with Kenny. And so he makes it clear that he thinks what happened was unacceptable and asks if she spoke up. And she was like, was I supposed to? And he says, how are things supposed to improve if people like you don't speak up in situations like this? I don't work with people like Kenny. And Yaz is starting to get pissed. She's like, excuse me, that's up to me. And Maxim says, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself here. And Yaz is really starting to get insulted. She's like, what are we talking about? And Maxim says, I care about you. Why do you think I came? I felt guilty about the position you put yourself in front of me. You think I came to see my sales coverage or my friend? And Yasmin is like, What happened to me happened to me. How I deal with it is my choice. Maxim replies, then you should do better. To which Yaz replies, fuck off, ally. And Maxim replies, enjoy your hangover. So this whole thing, first of all, I understand what Maxim was doing because yes, like Kenny, but no. Yaz felt like she was starting to do better professionally in the sense that she now had landed this big client. He was the sales coverage and he's like, you're not my sales coverage, you're my friend. Like, I'm not here in a professional capacity. I'm here as a friend. But I actually almost think that that's worse because it's very disrespectful of her. It's taking away her agency. I really was bothered by this. I mean, there is a better way to be like, you should say something because he could do something like this to somebody else and not to do it that way. So I'm curious how you took it. I initially was like, yes, thank you for telling her she should speak up. And then I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, back off. I don't know.
You know, it's funny. I remember in the episode where they had the recruiting event where Yasmin came down pretty hard on Robert for kind of the performative feminism. He was trying to be a white knight rescuing her.
Yes.
Kenny has been acting like a white knight all episode, rescuing her from Jackie, speaking up on her behalf in front of Hillary. And now Maxim is acting like a white knight by saying, I'm telling you what the right thing is for you. Why aren't you doing the right thing for you? And to your point, it's up to Yasmin how she wants to handle this. Yasmin allowed herself to be put in that situation because Yasmin thought that was the price she had to pay to be sales coverage for Maxim. And now he's saying, I don't care about you as my sales coverage. You're just my friend who I was doing a favor to. And so it's like the whole transactional, right? Remember we talked about relationship building so then you can then leverage it one day for the purpose of business. And that's the meaning of networking. And Maxim is basically telling her, I never really cared about making this a business relationship. I was doing things because I like you. And quite frankly, he is treating her like someone who has a little bit of a crush on her, not someone who respects her in a business capacity whatsoever.
Which is what she wants.
That's all she's ever wanted. All she wants is for someone to take her seriously as FX sales. And so her answer is not perfect either. Her getting so angry and frustrated with Maxim isn't either. I think had she not had alcohol and had she not been already so spun up by all these things, I think that there's a constructive conversation that a Yasmin and a Maxim can have where she says, hey, listen, I'm bothered by this in my own way. I so appreciate you wanting to help me make things right. Here's how you can actually support me. And by the way, our business relationship is really important to me. I want to get that right. I will let you know if there's a way you can support me emotionally, and I will let you know if there's a way that you can advocate for me. This is not that way. Right. So let's figure that out together. And that's like the sane, thoughtful conversation that never happens at a bar. And that never happens when emotions are heightened. And so she's not perfect either by dismissing him as being that like performative feminist. But I agree. I don't think Maxim's doing her any favors by telling her that she's not offended and she's not reacting in the right way to the injustice that was done to her.
Especially because here's the thing. Why will people maybe not say anything? Because they are worried about the blowback. And like, that sucks that that's the case, but that's still the case. Like if she were to say something, and we're going to see later, like what ultimately she decides to do and how things are advised and like all that. I mean, it's not like necessarily just, hey, you say something and everything is roses. So it's very easy in the abstract to say, do the right thing. It's not always as easy because there are consequences to people who do speak up. And
so
they do get painted
fall in a gray area. Yasmin willingly put down, she was like, I'm going to put my own credit card down at this strip club. Or like play this out. Let's say when Hillary was coming around for those donations and he asked about Silver Kite and Kenny looked at her so nervously. What if she'd been like, Kenny dragged me to a strip club and announced that to their manager? I think there's a scenario very easily where Kenny gets fired. I think that scenario also probably involves Yasmin getting fired.
Exactly. Because also if you think back to the exact events, she was the one that was trying to hang with the guys. And again,
it wasn't the place.
She suggested the place and she suggested that they all get lap dances. And then Kenny was like, cool, you said it. Let's, but the problem is that in the court of whatever opinion or HR shit, to your point, like she could get fired too. So it's not just, I'm going to do this thing. And the end result is that it's going to mean that everything is great and I don't have to work with Kenny. And now I'm like doing great. Like, no, also Kenny is now, probably because he feels a little bad, trying to help a little bit and like trying to give her more responsibility, which is again, the thing that she wants. And it goes back to like what Harper said. It's like, if the outcome is better. Like, who cares how you got there? I don't agree with that. But I also feel like it's not black and white.
The bigger problem that I wish we could solve, the problem is that Yasmin felt she needed to do this to be part of the crew, to be one of the cool guys. That's the big bad problem that we can sit here until we're blue in the face and talk about fixing that problem. It's simply the reality that we live in. And we can talk about how toxic that is and how that culture has changed and what still needs to be done and all those things. But we live in reality. Yasmin lives in reality where things are not black and white.
Again, and put a final exclamation mark. It was like when Gus said to Sarah, the problem is the fact that Hari felt the need to do this in the first place, right? He felt the need to pull in all-nighters to show that he was working so hard. It wasn't that someone explicitly told him he had to do it. He thought he had to. And just like Yasmin thought she had to, with horrible consequences, obviously Hari's ending much worse, but it's the same thing. It's the culture of what's going on around and feeling like you have to do this certain thing to fit in, to be taken seriously, to be good at your job, to be rewarded. So 100%. Anyway, now we're back on the trading floor. And Daria and Harper are talking about their personal lives. And Daria, of course, asks about Harper's siblings. Again, I really wish we talked about this last week. Like, just can we get off of this? But whatever. Yeah. So Harper then, to change the subject off of her brother, says, we should get another bottle. So clearly they just had a whole bottle of champagne together. And Daria admits that she was so obviously appalled by the way that Eric had treated Greg earlier on the desk. She's like, the number of times I've had to hold my tongue makes me want to scream. And so she says, I've wanted to keep you close. I've been watching the way Eric treats you, the way he gives and takes, textbook narcissism. And Harper replies, it's only because he cares. And Daria says, I don't doubt he cares. I feel it too. But Daria says, I
used to feel it too.
Yeah. So he used to treat her like that. So okay, I miswrote that down.
We have this insight where we realize that Daria was once Harper.
Good point.
And I think that's a really, really, really critical point right there.
Really, really, really good. Okay, so then Daria asks, has he ever crossed a line with you? And Harper now is like, yeah, I mean, he scared me once. You know, the other day he locked me in a meeting room, like, ha, 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 like casually. Daria's horrified. And Harper explains,
like the meeting tone, the tone totally changes.
Yes. And so Harper says, I think he was just absent-minded. The reptilian part of my brain was like, fuck, how am I going to get out? My first thought was I might die in here, which is a neurologic response, not a rational one.
Which is insane, by the way, that she thought she was going to die in that room. I agree. Come on.
But we also do know that she had like this weird history of panic attacks and like didn't finish her final. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why she would have this, oh my God, I'm going to die now. So I have no idea. It also could be like there was past trauma, something happened. You never know. They haven't, there's been no.
Without that context.
Which by the way, there is no context. Up through where I am in season 3, like there's never been anything that she's been assaulted before. Now, I think that if someone had been assaulted before.
I would have been, I mean, if somebody says they felt like they were going to die, you're going to take them all of a sudden, how serious, whatever it is they're saying. You're imagining the worst. You're imagining, like, did he pick up a chair and threaten to hit you with it?
Yeah.
Like, did he break out a pocket? Like, oh my God, why'd you think you were going to die? Because someone locked the door in a conference room for a stern conversation.
Right. But then she goes, I couldn't catch my breath, but he makes me feel special. Daria replies, it's a powerful thing. And then changing subject is like, shall we go join the party? I think because she wants to now share this information, and we see it, right, with Sarah. So as they're leaving to go to the party, the 3 druggies walk in, and Harper gives Robert a look, because obviously she had asked him to keep an eye on Greg. And Robert just replies, he's fine, just a few beers. Like, really? Okay. So next scene, now we are back with Gus, who's talking to Lord Okai.
Okai, in speaking to Gus, has identified that he is different from the rest of the group. That there is something about him, the way that his mind works, that he had these aspirations to be a politician. Whatever he said during that really successful banter with Okai shows him that, oh, you're one of us, right? You're people who has higher ambitions beyond just the lowly money grubbing sales and trading people who are all over here getting drunk and doing drugs. So he's relating to Gus on that level. Then he starts asking very pointed questions. And he says, how has all this affected you? And it's like, well, what is all this? Is all this like just this overall culture that I'm now being steeped in, right? And it becomes very clear that he's referencing Hari's death. So now he reveals that he's on the board of this UK Heart Association and that Pierpoint is making a donation to them in Hari's name. And Gus suddenly realizes that Sarah has set up this entire conversation, right?
Yep.
And she is positioning Gus as this is the guy who's going to vouch for Pierpoint being a good egg so that they can make this big donation in Hari's name and the firm can finally wipe their hands clean of the whole Hari scandal. And Okai is saying, I just want to know if the bank cares whether or not the person who sat next to Hari is okay. Gus is not okay in any way, shape, or form. So Gus has done nothing to show the lie that Pierpoint is trying to project in the media and the press. And he says, I'm starting to feel like just an accessory here. And that's when Sarah pulls them aside for a big photo op, right?
Jumps in between the two of them to take a picture.
Exactly.
Yes. I mean, back at the very beginning, when she's bringing him over and introducing, it's like, why is she introducing him? And then here it's revealed. Like, what we had thought it was is absolutely the case. It is all PR. It is all trying to whitewash or make it seem like everything, because again, back to what we were talking about, the culture is not fine if you have people who are doing this. And it's not about the pills and taking that stuff up. That was a symptom of the problem, which is the culture is, I need to stay up all night. Like, he should never have thought he needed to stay up all night. He never would have taken those pills. He never would have not slept, and he never would have died. So, yes.
You have the great side-by-side trying to make things right of Gus in his narrative, everyone trying to make things right with Hari's death. You have everyone trying to make things right with Yasmin and this strip club debacle and everything that Kenny's done with her. And now you have, how are we going to try to make everything right with what's gone down between Harper and Eric? So those are kind of our three parallel plot lines of what are all the different ways that the toxic culture tries to clean up after itself and how successful are those efforts?
Yes. All right. So now the next scene. So Jen messaged me yesterday as she was watching it. She was like, what the hell is going on with this episode? And it's funny because I've talked about how I've watched this. This is my second time and I didn't remember this particular part. Okay, let me ask, because you know what? I'm trying to think of
what
like how
question are you going to ask me to weigh in on my
okay. I like don't even want to say this. Usman says
I want to snort cocaine off somebody's butt. Now this is a reference to Wolf of Wall Street.
That was my question.
Leo DiCaprio
that was my question
with a stripper.
Okay, that was my question, because he later says not as glamorous as when Leo did it. So my initial question that I was like going to ask you, because I have seen Wolf of Wall Street, but it was so long ago that my question was, did Leo actually do this in Wolf of Wall Street?
So I mean, to be fair, I know the reference as being to Wolf of Wall Street. It's not a scene that is seared on my retina.
Yeah,
the same way that the reenactment of the scene from Industry
will be seared on your retina.
Seared on my retina. Because it is this very clinical experience where I thought he was just saying it metaphorically. No, they then go and attempt this. And they go into a conference room and you've got what appears to be like nothing short of a medical procedure happening with Usman. I don't even know what he's doing back there. It all looks very sad and depressing and just awful in the most medical, unglamorous way possible. And so I think to your point, when Usman says it looked more glamorous when Leo did it, I think that's almost the punchline for everything in this episode. It's so sexed up. It's okay, we're doing these things because we think we're supposed to, because it's all sexed up in Hollywood. So we're going and doing the drugs because that's what people on Wall Street do. First of all, like, again, what we've always said, like, we've never seen anything like this. Or we're going to the strip club because that's what I think I'm supposed to do to fit in with the guys. Everyone's doing the things that they think they're supposed to do because they're a part of this set of cultural norms, like we were discussing earlier with Yasmin and Maxim. And it's like, guys, just because you saw it in Wolf of Wall Street doesn't mean that this is something that we should be like putting into practice now. And by the way, it's clearly way less glamorous and cool than Leonardo DiCaprio makes it seem.
Yes. And so then as soon as Usman is done, like, doing cocaine off of Robert's butt, this is the kicker. So Robert then says, should we go join Clement and Casper for a nightcap? And Usman says they're probably commiserating. And Robert's like, why? And this is when Usman reveals that Casper is retiring, which, by the way, he has known all along, because he, quote unquote, wants to spend more time with his family. And so I was just like, so you made him do these like crazy psychedelics. You made him let him snort coke up his butt and holding it over him because he's your coverage, all while knowing that he's not your coverage anymore. and that they're effectively firing them.
Well, I will say this. I mean, just to get into the mechanics here, just because the head of a fund is retiring does not mean the fund is being shut down and you no longer have a client. Even these places like Soros, Bluecrest, et cetera, that became family offices when their fund managers decided to retire or decided to return money to outside investors or whatever it may be, they remain clients of the street. So, like, at best, it's actually important that Robert maintain the relationship with Usman, because if the fund will remain in existence, Usman will likely be elevated to a senior portfolio manager level. So that's why I understand what the showrunners were getting across, like exactly what you said. You just made me do all these crazy things and jump through all these hoops so that I can be your coverage, and now I'm not going to be your coverage anymore. But like, at least, again, from someone who's only seen this episode and doesn't know what is going to happen, that would be standard practice in the industry of like, that doesn't mean your relationship with this firm and this fund goes away.
Yeah. So Greg then pipes in and just goes, wow, Clement's only client hangs up his boots. We're watching your chances of a job at the end of this fall in real time.
Yeah, thanks, Greg, for hitting us over the head with the plot line you wanted. Like, I get it. They have Greg there to convey this exact meaning because anyone might react the way I did. I just wanted to make that clear that this is a plot device. This is not real life.
Yes, 100%. Okay, so now we are back at the party again. And Kenny and Yaz start talking, and Kenny can clearly tell like something didn't go right because he's like, are we going to win business? And obviously Yaz is like, no. Then Yaz just asks him like, why are you being so nice to me? She's asking questions in a slightly more aggressive way. I do think her emotions are up. She's been drinking. So she's asking him, is it because you want to change or because you're worried about the consequences of your actions? And so Kenny is then starting to ask, very insulted, what is my crime?
Kenny tells her to sober up, which is ironic because he's the one who typically has the drinking problem.
Exactly. Which, by the way, also like Maxim says, enjoy your hangover. Like it's, yes, I think that they're also trying to communicate that like she has had a lot to drink. So obviously emotions are heightened, but also there is something
compared
that's
to
really
everyone else at this party,
insulting.
She doesn't look super wasted. You know, Nicole's stumbling all over herself.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens to Greg. I mean, Yasmin's a little testy and she's not acting her perfectly coiffed self, but like she doesn't seem belligerent and she's finally bringing things with Kenny to a head. I think Kenny asked the question deferentially, are we going to win their business now? Knowing the answer was no and seeing how the conversation went, because he didn't know, by the way, that the outcome of the conversation was what it was because of Yasmin. For all he knew, the conversation could have been Maxim saying, I'm so sorry. I love you, Yasmin. I can't do business with Pierpoint because of Kenny, right? That's a perfectly logical outcome that conversation could have been. So Kenny doesn't know. He may have a suspicion, but he doesn't know that it wasn't because of him.
Right. But I also think that sometimes the most hurtful thing someone can say to you is something you know deep down is true. And I think that's what's happening here with Kenny. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, because he knows what he's done. He has said earlier that he woke up broken after he yelled at her at that grad dinner. And then probably when he was calling, I still think he was calling to apologize. Like, I think he's just feels horrible. And
I think
but
that
also
now,
like,
I didn't think it at the time.
But so he says, I can't believe you brought that up to me when I told you in confidence what drinking does to me. Why do you bring this side out of me? And then he...
Oh, by the way to blame the victim. Why do you make me mean
100%,
to you?
100%.
Thanks,
100%.
Kenny. You suck.
And then he says he walked because you can't separate the personal and the professional, which is, no, he walked because of how Kenny treated him / the whole thing that went down. But
but that is true about Yasmin. That is the true insight about Yasmin.
True. The XX.
There is no boundary for Yasmin between her personal life and her professional life, even though she desperately wants there to be.
Well, and I do think that part of it too is I think she feels the only thing she brings to the table is these relationships that she has, but versus like a Harper who's making her little like fancy models and has a little bit of like that ruthlessness and ways about getting things done, whether or not, actually some creative ways. But I think the way that Yasmin sees it, like this is the one thing she can bring to the table. She has this expensive education. She has this huge fancy network. She speaks all these languages. And so for her to start to try to use some of her personal stuff for professional, I mean, I don't know. I feel like people do that a lot. That's not just her.
The lines are completely blurred in sales. The thing is that for Yasmin, what I think the big additional element is the sex element. And that's always part of the conversation with Yasmin when it comes to her personal relationships. She's not bringing any women into this. That's not something that she has ever demonstrated, at least not to this point in episode 6. Maxim is this glamorous, conventionally handsome, well-spoken man who's clearly a gentleman. And there may be no amorous intention on his part, but they don't not imply it.
Yes. So now we're into the next scene where Harper's back at the party and runs into Nicole. And here Harper she's like fed up. Like Nicole's like, come have a drink with me, blah, blah, blah. And Harper's just like, no, you need fresh air, takes her outside, gets her in a car, straps her in, and is just like, driver, take her away. Doing probably what she wished she had done back at the first dinner. So one of the things, like, you can see her kind of coming into her own, getting more confidence, being like, I'm not going to deal with this shit. Like, you try to do something, like, no, like, I'm not going to just sit here and take it. So that was good. Now,
no, hang on.
Mm-hmm. No?
As she's strapping her in, Nicole unzips her pants. This is wildly inappropriate. This woman is like out of control. And what is she doing? Is she interpreting this as like Harper's going to get in the car and hook up with her? I mean, this is insane.
It's funny. I like didn't even notice the unzip the pants thing, but I mean, I guess
that was like the point of that whole scene.
Okay, so glad I missed the whole
Harper
point.
Is doing the great responsible thing and like still dealing with this crazy
person. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, good to know. So now we're back. And this whole scene is also just kind of crazy. But so now we're back. Gus and Alice are talking. Alice.
People are dancing at this party. Okay. There are literally memos that used to go out at every single bulge bracket thing. I don't know if it was do not dance at the holiday party was the effective, even if it wasn't explicitly written in there. That was
I've definitely been to a holiday party with dancing.
Did you dance?
I don't remember.
It was
I think,
like
everyone
a known
probably
thing
was.
that like anyone seen dancing at a holiday party was like, you're not going to have a job in 6 months. That was a very known thing back in my day. Now, there were client events where there might be a late night out and we might go out dancing. But it was never in a holiday party function where dancing was, there would be people dancing, but those people were chastised and looked down upon.
Yeah. So the one that I'm thinking of, they rented out a club in Meatpacking District. That was definitely, I mean, like, I feel like just everyone was dancing at that. Like, I don't remember, but I don't know. So the night got later, I think just everyone was dancing. Like, so it's so fun. I mean, it's not like ballroom dancing, but just like, like, you know. But again, that was 2007. Times have changed. So we talked about like the elevator. There's 2 elevator scenes that are about to happen.
So after we flash to the dancing, we see Gus standing off to the sidelines, watching Theo dancing, looking at him longingly. Alice approaches Gus and in a friendly way suggests that she's kind of suspicious of them. She says something on the order of like, the way you guys look at each other. And Gus is literally sitting there looking longingly at Theo. And so the question starts to come into your mind. What does she know? How much does she suspect? And by the way, how much of an idiot is she? Because they literally had sex in her townhouse while she was there.
Yes.
But regardless. So sure enough, Gus and Theo make it to the bathroom. They have sex. They come back down in the elevator and are acting very lovey-dovey in the elevator. And the elevator doors open while they are kind of mid-embrace. And Alice sees them. So the jig is up. And by the way, thank God, because seriously, I truly hope that there is more of a plot line for Gus than the Hari death, which is tragic, but I want to move past it. And Theo. I don't like Theo. I hate this relationship. I really want someone better for Gus. To be honest, I kind of hope Robert comes out and they can be together because I like them so much more as a couple than him and Theo. But whatever. So
I agree with this. Yeah,
they are officially caught. Simultaneously now, we have Yasmin and Robert. So Yasmin, I mean, the second Maxim responded negatively to Yasmin, I was like, she and Robert are going to hook up tonight. That's a given. We knew this scene was coming. So Yasmin yanks Robert off to the gym, basically. They hook up in a very much like she wants to exercise her power over him.
It's like a dominatrix type.
Exactly. Yeah. Basically, you do what I say. And that has been the theme of every quasi-sexual encounter they've had is her giving him orders, her kind of demeaning him, making him look like a fool, wearing the underwear on the head. And now we get their first actual hookup, but like she won't even let him kiss her. It's very much about her exerting her power. So all these themes, and she makes him do what she perceives as a demeaning act. Like there's all of these themes that we have talked about endlessly about Yasmin exerting her power sexually when she can't do it in the office. Now we've got that finally the realization of that with Robert that they've been teasing along for 6 full episodes. But so the best part is them in the elevator on the way back down from the gym going back to the party, because we heard Jackie give this line about, oh, you don't want to awkwardly be stuck in the work elevator with the person you slept with. So now we have the exact same thing. And remember earlier too, when Harper had been talking to Yasmin about what would happen if you were locked in a room with Robert, she's locked in a little metal box with Robert stuck here. So they're like trying to make small talk, which is absolutely absurd. He's asking her about her Christmas plans, and he's asking her about her family, and he's trying to relate. And he says, sometimes the loneliest place can be in a room with the people who are supposed to love you. Basically saying, I have this problematic relationship with my family. Do you have one with yours as well? And she's like, what? Like, what are you on? Like, just chalks it up to him being drunk or whatever. But that's how he feels with his family. And by the way, that's how it should feel for Yasmin with her family.
I was going to say,
with Seb, and with like how her mom treats her and belittles her. Yeah. She doesn't get the joke, but that's the story of her entire thing, is all these people who are supposed to love you. Maxim, Seb, Kenny, all these people who are supposed to love you make her feel lonely, and she just doesn't get the joke at all.
I will say, without giving anything away, there was something rich about her saying, that's fucked, and her being like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Given what ultimately happens, especially into season 3, like I just watched, for anyone who has binged ahead, again, no spoilers, I am on season 3, I think it's like episode 6, and like, holy shit. So for her to have that reaction, I know the writers like didn't know necessarily exactly where they were going, but like, that's all. That's all I have to say.
Well, with the information we have available, do you disagree, agree, like think it's a decent read on like she doesn't get the joke, but this does accurately describe her life?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, it 100% describes her life. That's why that was, and it's just more pronounced like when you sort of see where shit goes. But
got it.
Oh, it 100% is her life. And again, it's so clear to you who is literally going off just this. And her reaction is like, you're fucked, aren't you? And it's like,
yeah, like you must have problems.
So are you.
You must be drunk. You must be, yeah, but my life's great. And so while these two scenes have been happening simultaneously, Greg on his absolute bender is wasted and goes to walk towards what he thinks is the party and walks into a glass wall. And so, Kristen, I will let you resume plot narration from here.
Greg is totally coked out of his mind, tries to walk into a party, walks into a glass door. Then he, instead of being the normal person, like, shit, I just walked into a door, he then tries to run into the door. People try to take him and pull him away, and he escapes,
bleeding from
runs
the head
in one more time. Yes. And like blood now is splattered all over the glass door. He falls down. They say he's breathing. He has a pulse, but he's not responsive. He's completely knocked out. And it was insane.
So Harper sees all of this. They're calling 911. And this is when Yaz and Robert make their triumphant return back to the party. And Harper sees them. She sees what's happened to Robert. I'm sorry. She sees
but she also sees Harper. But she also sees Harper and Robert together and still has some jealous feelings. Also had told him, please keep an eye on Greg. Clearly he didn't. Robert is also a mess. I mean, but he's not acting as much a mess as Greg is. Harper marches up to him and says, you're a fucking child and a fucking addict. Guess we can add Greg to your list of casualties. And Robert then, as Harper walks away, tries to touch Yaz, and she says, don't fucking touch me. So
that
was an interesting.
I do wonder to what extent. I like that she said both things. You're an addict and a child, because I think you can read that two ways. One, you can read that as like Robert is immature and he's an addict. Or you can also read it as Robert's the addict and Yasmin's the child, because Yasmin is using, because Yasmin is acting in this immature way with Robert, and Harper is kind of almost equally pissed with both of them, because I do think she's looking at both of them. Those words, I think, can have that dual meaning. And I think that was a little, maybe it was unintentional, maybe it was intentional, but I view that as a little bit ambiguous, that she's also kind of pissed at Yasmin for hooking up with Robert.
Yes. So now we switch to the next scene, and they start playing Carol of the Bells, which is like one of my absolute favorite Christmas songs of all time. And it conjures up to me, I don't know if you have the same thing, whenever I hear it, have like just the image of in Home Alone where Kevin is basically booby trapping his entire house with some like Carol of the Bells. And then like at the very end, he's like about to eat his mac and cheese. I have seen that movie. I don't even know. So many times. I am obsessed with that movie. It is like my feel-good movie. I watch it every Christmas, basically. But so instead of the booby trapping the place, what you see is all the janitors having to clean up all the shit. So it's like
nice.
You see,
a nice connection there. I like that.
Well, because you see them cleaning the blood off the glass. You see them cleaning the drugs out of the bathroom. You see the evidence of ever weird kinky shit Yaz and Rob did together. They're cleaning up the gym locker room. And also, it does remind you, there's like huge party, but then it's like the cleanup after. It's always so depressing. The class element of these poor janitors having to clean up these people.
I like the scene where the guy takes the roll of dollar bills off the toilet paper holder that they were using to smoke cocaine and pockets it. Like,
I saw that.
This guy won at the end of the day. I'm like, good job, janitor, you did it. Like, I want the janitor to win in that case. Like, stop doing these drugs in the bathroom, guys.
Yes. So anyway, I actually like really liked that scene. And so now we're back and then it's the next morning and Robert goes into Gus's room. Gus is just lying on the bed. Like, I'm not going in. Between what happened with Theo, I mean, Theo's probably not talking to him now. The Hari situation and being used as a prop, all is bad. So back on the desk, Yaz opens up Robert's gift. I mean, I don't know, whatever. That's just sort of weird.
While Yaz is opening Robert's gift, we get the best 5-star dialogue we've possibly had of the show thus far off camera. Because again, 90% of the plot of the show is happening off camera. So if you are not watching with closed captions, stop immediately whatever you're doing and turn them on. So we've got Hillary, the managing director on FX, doing what everyone does with their clients the morning after a big party. And the first thing he says is, "I'm so hungover, it feels like it's happening to someone else." Great line. Then he goes, "This hangover would honestly kill a small child." Okay. Then you hear the break in conversation as clearly the other person's responding. And he goes, no, I mean, if they had it. So now you know the other person's likely suggesting, like, how dare you suggest that children have hangovers? And he goes, no, I'm not condoning child abuse. And then he immediately says, "I actually went shooting with Ghislaine before it all kicked off." Meaning he was friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, who we all know, if you don't know the reference, was Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand woman in this trafficking of women that happened in the whole Epstein scandal. So like, oh my God, holy shit, what a joke to make. But then it shifts and he says, "Yeah, the big man who runs our cross-product desk, not in today. Rumors flying everywhere. He probably got bid away." So this is, so we have now come full circle. So it's not Greg not showing up the day after the holiday party. Eric has not shown up after the day of the holiday party. And they cut to not janitors cleaning up the mess. They cut to employees taking a baseball bat, which we remember Eric's baseball bat, and a glove and putting them in one of those sad banker boxes. We're like, why the hell are they packing up Eric's desk? Right?
I totally missed this.
Yeah, this is the key that something has happened with Eric. And now we find ourselves in the room with Sarah, Daria, and Harper. Now, I want you to talk through this scene, but I want to highlight here that I struggle a little bit with the timeline because we know that it was the FOMC day. So we know that the holiday party happened on a Wednesday. We know that the scene in the conference room happened 72 hours later. So I'm no mathematician, but that goes Thursday is 24 hours. Friday is 48 hours, right? And then Saturday would be 72 hours. So unless we're counting 72 business hours only, that places our conversation in the conference room on a Saturday. Now, there are elements later that do make it tie out with being a Saturday. The lawyer says we've been talking to Eric's people all weekend.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
So if this is, in fact, a weekend, that ties out. Because also, again, I want to unpack this whole scene, but Harper then goes to hang out with Greg outside of work. So that would all track that this is like a Saturday night dinner. I just wanted to
I think you're 100% right.
framework intact as we're thinking about this. Okay.
No,
sorry.
that's so good because I was
to...
confused by the weekend thing. So like literally as you said that, I was like, oh, I'm so happy you did all that detective work.
Well, it's not detective work. It's again, it's an if you know thing. To
I don't know. It's
connecting
some dots. It's connecting some dots.
Yeah.
So
again, not everyone would know that the Fed meeting would have to be a Wednesday.
Right. Okay, so we're back at the opening scene. They basically repeat a bunch of the lines all over again, although then they add in some new ones. So they, same thing they said before. Did you feel threatened? I can't be sure you didn't lock the door for privacy. Motivation's not the issue, blah, blah, blah. And then Daria asks Harper, why are you mincing your words? Harper replies, I don't know what you want me to say. Because Harper clearly is like, they want me to try to get him fired. I mean, she understands what's going on here. And Sarah says, we don't want you to do anything. We just want to know what happened. And Harper says, I could have gotten up and left. Daria replies, could you? Did you feel you could have? Harper replies, maybe not. And so they then, one more time, are like, did Eric knowingly or unknowingly lock you in a meeting room against your will? And Harper replies, he did. So Sarah then says, we've already spoken with him. I just needed to hear it from you. He did the right thing. This is where now the two men who are clearly lawyers come out and have a piece of paper that they hand to.
So Hollywood, by the way. You've got like the old white-haired lawyer march in, like, lawyer, attorney ex machina, hand her this stack of papers. I mean, that was just so Hollywood.
100%. And so she asks, I have to sign an NDA? And the lawyer replies, it's in everybody's interest that you sign. And Harper's like, do I even have time to read it? And the lawyer then just replies, we hate to put you through this, but we've been speaking with Eric's representatives all weekend, and these are his severance terms, not ours. The only thing to avoid a tribunal, which reputationally he didn't want. And then he replies, this is a lot simpler for him and then you. So Harper signs it. You actually see a slight smile from Daria at this point, which is kind of like, we've got Sarah doesn't smile, which I thought was interesting. And then now to your point, last scene, we're now at Greg's.
Well, by the way, we're in this gorgeous, fully decked out home, and Greg's in his robe. So I'm like, are they trying to make like this is Greg's bachelor pad? He's got a fully decorated Christmas tree, a fireplace with a roaring fire, nice matching furniture, decorative books. And I was like, what single dude's house looks like something out of a Hallmark movie? And sure enough, like 2 seconds later, you do hear his mom off screen. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Because I was like, what is this?
Yeah. But the point, though, is Greg had been really pissed off at Harper. Clearly, he's past that. I mean, he had to go to the hospital because, as we remember, he was unresponsive. Now, obviously, Harper is visiting him. And there's a line that he says, after people get shelter and family, they yearn to be actualized. And I feel like this is the type of thing that you would know. So
it's from Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
The only reason I know that is because that's literally the next thing that Harper says. But you can talk about this, Jen, because I don't know anything about what the hell this is.
No, it's really just a philosophical framework for trying to understand how people prioritize things. I mean, you can imagine. Right? Yes. Like people need food, they need shelter, they need to reproduce. These are like the basic biological urges that we have.
Necessity. Yeah.
And then this concept of, he calls it actualization. Basically, it's like, okay, Greg, through writing this screenplay, and by the way, I had completely forgotten about from the prior episodes where he was talking about the writer's journey and things like that this was what he was pursuing as his side hobby. But it's very clear that to Greg, the job is the job, and life outside the job is what actualizes him. Harper doesn't understand why the job isn't enough for him. And the kicker of the episode is Harper asks Greg if he thinks Eric's a bad person. And Greg just goes, I don't know. I just work for him, right? Because again, for Greg, real life is writing this screenplay. Real life is being with his family for the holidays. Real life happens outside of work. And that's why he's so depressed by the job, because it's not giving him that fulfillment. He needs things outside of the job for that self-actualization. And that's why he's doubling down on the drugs and the drinking. It's because the job isn't fulfilling for him.
But I also, look, this is just my take. Clearly he was brought up, and everyone has said this, right? White privilege, silver spoon, whatever. I think when you don't have to work for things and they just happen to you, I mean, like, you don't get that sense of pride. Whereas for Harper, everything she's doing, she's like conquering one thing after the next, right? Yes. She was able to get this job when against all odds, actually be really good at it against all odds. The people that have been in her life suck. Her mother is terrible. Meanwhile, Greg's mom is like,
real
come to
life
dinner.
Is the job.
I've heard people who win the gold medal in whatever sport it is. It's like they almost get depressed because you're like, well, what do I do now? And there is something to be said for having to work hard and feel like you're getting somewhere and make something. Whereas for Greg, it's all been handed to him. Yeah. Whereas for Greg, it's all been handed to him. Like he hasn't had to do anything.
Well, so that's why he wants to go be a writer, right? Like it's not hard for him to succeed in finance, 100%. So I'm reading this the exact same way that you are. For Harper, all there is in life is succeeding in this job. The ends always justify the means for her because the ends are succeeding in this job. I mean, I'm not surprised given what I imagine it would have felt like to sit in Harper's shoes in that room when you have the head of the program and you have this other woman being like, but didn't he upset you? Didn't he say these things? Wouldn't Pierpoint be better without him? Like that's an abuse of power as well to effectively coerce this statement and this signature out of Harper through this uncomfortable setting. If I were Harper, and by the way, if any of you ever find yourselves in Harper's shoes, you should immediately retain an attorney to represent you in those kind of situations. She is completely railroaded in that office, and that is bad news bears.
Well, I mean, it reminded me of in Succession when like the lawyer drama with Greg where they're trying to get him to sign that joint defense agreement for Waystar. And he's like, I just want my own lawyer. And it's the same thing because on the other side, they have the people representing Pierpoint's interest, the people representing Eric's interest. And then here she is, a grad, and they don't even offer to get her a lawyer.
They're never going to offer to get you a lawyer in those things. I can promise you that, but you should know better. I'm just letting you know, learn it from us. But I will say too, the whole problem was that Eric locked her in a room.
Yes.
She is all but locked in this room. There is no exit.
There's an irony about it.
Which is why I thought, of course, which is why I thought, again, that would have been such a better title for this episode. There is no exit.
Not an exit.
Once you find yourself in that room having that conversation, there is no way that that conversation ends well for Harper. There's nothing she can say or do. If she's like, no, it was fine, then she has undermined Daria and Sarah's agenda and she's going to find herself riffed. Eric's getting fired probably no matter what. It's either does he get fired with cause and then sue for his lost wages, which a lot of people do, or is he leaving on his own terms with this great severance package and they're going to hush cover it all up, which we know is Pierpoint's preferred way because of what they're doing with the Hari thing.
Right. So I will say though, I do love myself a good anything Christmas themed. So I actually liked this episode a lot just because I like the Christmas part of it. So I don't know how you feel. Who are we bullish and who are we bearish on, Jen?
I'm bearish on Gus. I don't see a future for Gus's plot line, and I really hope there is a future for him because every single plot line that he has, I detest. I am so bored with all of his plot lines. I want Theo gone. I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound callous. I'm done with the Hari plot line. I'm done with all of it. I'm done with him being annoyed that he's in sales and trading. Get over it or go find yourself another job.
Or go find something else.
Again, I do think it's a good idea.
Coming from the woman who, by the way, moved 4 times in 3 years.
Especially as like a first-year analyst 5 minutes in. Figure it out.
Yes.
So whom am I bullish on?
How are we feeling about Daria, given I do think there was a little
Daria. So I think that she's coercing Harper for the benefit of her agenda here.
Exactly. I was going to say.
And this isn't the same kind of abuse that Nicole from Malin Mercer is heaping upon Daria. But Daria, almost under the guise of being this sisterly mentor, is using Harper to exact her vengeance upon Eric. So I don't love that about Daria. And Daria is almost being, by the way, like the white knight, like Maxim is trying to be for Harper. So I'm over the white knights. I mean, oh my gosh, is there anyone I'm bullish on after this episode? I mean, maybe Greg can figure it out. I don't know.
Oh, at the end, I'm like, Greg.
Who are we rooting for?
I'm trying to think.
I'm rooting for everyone.
I'm rooting for Yaz. I'm rooting for Harper, even though, again, it's like when you watch any of these shows and there's like the bad guy and you still want them to succeed. I'm not saying Harper is the bad guy, but after the Wrong Way Trade episode, we know how we feel about her there and just some of the stuff with the middle office guy and all that. But I still want her to succeed. I want Yasmin to succeed. I want her to be taken seriously. And I want Kenny to turn his life around. So, I mean, I don't know. But I'm with you.
I want Yasmin and Robert to be a better couple. I want to root for them as a couple. And I feel like whenever there's a will they, won't they, you're so excited when they get together. And I'm like not excited about them getting together. And especially because I knew narratively it was immediately coming right after things didn't go well with Maxim because everyone's sufficiently primed and drunk. I was like, just don't be so predictable. But yes, like bullish on, okay, everyone's pretty much hit rock bottom, right?
Yes.
Eric, and by Eric's the way, are we Ned Starking Eric? Like, is Eric going to come back? Can you at least tell me that? Is Eric in future episodes?
Eric is going nowhere. Eric is like, a main character. He's not going anywhere.
Heart no further. I cannot take it if we Ned Stark Eric in
Eric
the
is not Ned Stark
episode.
Nope.
Great.
No.
Good. Okay. Excellent. That gives me much comfort because I, like you, feel like he is the best character in the show.
Yes. Like as a character, not as a human being, but as a character, he is fun to watch. And he does nuance well. Yeah. So this was fun.
Guys, please leave us a written 5-star review for this podcast. It will be too late. It's too late for you. We are holding our first of what will be many review contests. This episode is going to air the week of October 28th, and we will be making selections on November 1st. So it will be likely too late for you because these reviews take a minute to hit up in the system. But please leave us a written 5-star review if you're enjoying this podcast. We will have opportunities for future drawings.
I want to be very clear. If you write a written 5-star review now, you will be automatically entered in to win next time. So I don't want you to be like, oh, well, I missed the review deadline, so I'm not going to do it until next time. No. You will be automatically entered in. You can still enter because what we do is, and Jen is going to explain it in a minute, but it's not like you do it and now you're basically out of the whole thing. No. You basically now are entered in for futures. So
for life. Yeah, exactly. Yes. So what we would love for you to do is write a written 5-star review on Apple. You can then screenshot your review and email it to questions@wallstreetskinny.com. It's not the Wall Street Skinny, even though that's our name. It's questions@wallstreetskinny.com. And just say, here, this was me. I made this little review. You can take a little screenshot while you're typing it and you've sent it. And then you'll be automatically entered to win a 45-minute Zoom with us. The cost for one of these calls on the intro platform is $1,000. So this is $1,000 value that you get. You can ask us anything. You can ask us about your career. You can ask us technical questions. We can review your resume. We can do a mock interview with you. There are so many different things that we can offer. We really work for you for 45 minutes and make the most of your time. So thank you so much for listening, guys.
And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.